Hello, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Kerr, contributing editor for GoldDerby.com. I'm here with user Alex Meyer. We're here today discussing nominations, as so many award nominations are being announced this week. And what better place to start than the Golden Globes, as those nominations will be announced tomorrow. And so we'll be starting on the film side. And the way we'll be doing it, we'll be going over each category we can predict on Gold Derby. We'll be discussing what films or performances we feel are safest to get in, as well as figuring out what's going to fill out the rest of the categories.
Yep, and the Golden Globes are always a very interesting awards show because sometimes they'll just have nominations that'll come out of nowhere and make you go, whoa, or what?
Oh, yeah, sometimes even winners, as we seen with Aaron Taylor Johnson winning Best Supporting Actor last year.
I know, and I know some people, there were some people in my inner circle who were furious by that win because because in my little film lover circle, we had varying opinions on Nocturnal Animals. Some really loved it. Some, like me, thought it was just good but not great, and there were some who absolutely despised it. And those who absolutely despised it thought Aaron Taylor Johnson just basically came off as a live-action cartoon villain.
Well, yeah, and luckily he was not nominated by the Academy, so there it goes
Yeah.
to show how much impact the Globes have. But in any
And I
case,
like because yeah, and as I had said last year when we were talking about those nominations and like our discussions, the Oscars want more like layered psychopath portrayals, like Louise Fletcher in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Well, yeah, and luckily the Academy chose Michael Shannon to nominate for Nocturnal Animals as opposed to Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Right. But moving away from that, let's actually dive into our actual predictions here.
All right, we're starting with Best Film Drama. Now, okay, so I guess so what films do you think are safest to get in, and what do you feel is going to fill out the rest?
Okay, well, my current rankings so far, since we have to rank them from 1 to 5 in terms of likeliest to get nominated, I have Dunkirk at number 1, The Post at number 2, The Shape of Water at number 3, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri at number 4, and Call Me by Your Name at number 5.
Okay, I have those same 5 films, except in different orders. I mean, I do agree that, well, I definitely think Shape of Water, Dunkirk, and Call Me by Your Name, and I guess, well, I'd say those 3. It'll probably be between those. Well, I mean, I guess we'll have to see the nominations first, but I think those 3 are, well, I definitely think Dunkirk and Shape of Water both seem like, well, they could be potential Golden Globe winners, since those are films the Hollywood Foreign Press likes to award. Like, of course, Dunkirk is from Christopher Nolan. It was a big hit back in the summer. Shape of Water is by, well, and plus Nolan's a Brit, and Shape of Water is by Guillermo del Toro, who's a Hispanic director, and
it won the top prize at the Venice Film Festival.
Yes, and Call Me by Your Name is by an Italian director, Luca Guadagnino, who, and not to mention that film has also been doing very well with the Critics Awards so far, and written by James Ivory.
Written by James Ivory, who was actually American, not Italian, but he's a very accomplished writer director. He's mostly known for directing he's directed like a lot of period dramas, like most notably A Room with a View, Howard's End, and The Remains of the Day, and a bunch of other films as well.
Yeah.
And
Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is by Martin McDonagh, who's, I believe, an Irish filmmaker.
Yeah.
And of course, The Post, which I actually have in 5th place in terms of nominations at this point. If it's nominated, well, it'll probably be a little higher up when we come to predicting the winners. But I mainly have The Post at the bottom, mainly because it just started screening. Well, I mean, I am pretty confident about it not becoming this year's Silence, where that film entered way late in the game, where it just failed to get in anywhere beyond cinematography. But yeah, I definitely think The Post is getting in based on its timely subject and all-star cast and star director Steven Spielberg.
Well, those are the very reasons why I have it so high. The fact that it's about the news itself, and about the media itself, and I think is going to attract the Golden Globes very much since the voters are all reporters and journalists themselves.
Well, well,
So
well, yeah. Even though that didn't help Spotlight to the finish line 2 years ago.
no, but I think Spielberg's name gives it uh, more of a chance, I guess, and plus, given that many of these Golden Globe voters, even though they mainly write about celebrities and movies for whatever magazines and newspapers they write for, basically the Post, even though it's set in the early 1970s, a lot of people are obviously going to see it as a big middle finger to Donald Trump right now. And I can only imagine that these voters may feel the same way and may embrace it as such, because let's be honest here, there obviously is only a very, very small portion of the globe likes Donald Trump. I'm guessing only Russians like him.
Yeah. Well, yes, and
Or at least the Russian government. I'd be very interested to have someone do like an undercover man on the street and ask ordinary Russian citizens what they think of Donald Trump.
well, yes, and I guess a dark horse of a film that could sneak in could probably, I mean, at least one I can think of, according to its odds on Gold Derby, is Darkest Hour. It's a British film, which is kind of a companion to Dunkirk because Dunkirk is about the events in Dunkirk, while Darkest Hour tells the story of what goes on behind the scenes with Winston Churchill.
Hmm. I mean, we could see, but but all those other films that we mentioned, they've been getting more
Attention.
attention just from the critics groups and things like that, and they seem to be like if we were to like if the Oscars we're still only having five nominees for Best Picture,
Hmm.
five most likely films to get in.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I agree. And now moving on to Best Actress in a Drama. Now, okay, so the Best Actress race is a very competitive one this year. I mean, of course, last year, well, we okay, it was an interesting case because we thought, early on Natalie Portman had a great shot. I mean, even though it was not a done deal, we still thought she had a great shot given that it's a traditional Oscar-winning performance for Jackie. Yet, of course, did not. Yet Emma Stone train took off at the Globes, SAG, and BAFTA with Isabelle Huppert in striking distance. While this year is much more competitive as there's so many viable candidates.
Mm. But of course, here they split them into drama versus musical/comedy.
Exactly.
So we're gonna so some ladies from both those categories aren't going to make it to the Oscars
Uh,
simply because there's not enough room.
well, yes. Yes, but as for who's getting in this category at the Globes, who do you feel is? Well, I mean, there are three ladies who I feel are a little most confident about getting in, which are Sally Hawkins for Shape of Water, Frances McDormand for Three Billboards, and Meryl Streep for The Post.
Um, well, my rankings right now, I have Frances McDormand for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri at number one, Sally Hawkins for The Shape of Water at number two, Meryl Streep for The Post at number three, Jessica Chastain for Molly's Game at number four, and then my big risk here, I don't see too many Gold Derby experts predicting this person, but I'm just going to go ahead and predict her just because this film has generated so much discussion about whether it's good, whether it's awful, or whether it was mismarketed, and that would be Jennifer Lawrence for Mother.
Yes, and I agree that Jessica Chastain is a solid choice for fourth place. Well, yes, I agree that Jennifer Lawrence. In fact, I'd say that the last slot is probably between two Golden Globe darlings, which are Jennifer Lawrence, who's won pretty much almost every single Globe she's been up for. Well, specifically for all her collaborations with
One.
David O. Russell, especially and she especially won 2 years ago for Joy, when a lot of us thought the Globes were just going to be tired of her at that point, and they were just going to go for the bigger star Amy Schumer. But no, they went with the more Oscar-worthy performance. And I'd say the other probably in this conversation is Kate Winslet for Wonder Wheel, even though that film has been getting pretty slammed by the critics, which I guess
Last time I checked, it was like a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, something like
well,
that, which my art house theater gets Wonder Wheel next week, but I probably just won't see it because I already have so many other films on my list of
Well, yeah. Plus, you're not.
films to see by the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
plus,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
plus, it, you who knows? Maybe this year Golden Globe voters might feel nominating anybody from a Woody Allen film would be unwise, given with the sexual harassment and abuse scandals that have come out recently, whether it be Harvey Weinstein or Kevin Spacey
Dustin Hoffman.
or yeah, just so many people. And of course, Woody Allen's been dealing with sexual abuse accusations since the early 90s. And there's always been the debate of did he or did he not do it? And, I think, obviously for many years, the Golden Globes and the Oscars have been kind of like, well, we don't know the truth. And until we do, we're not going to bother judging him. But, maybe this year things could change because because if Kate Winslet were to Kate Winslet's already been she's been getting slammed for being in this movie ever since she first signed on to it, you know
Hmm.
so
Well,
like it just I don't know, I mean, I guess so it's probably because of that and the fact that Wonder Wheel has been getting mediocre reviews
yeah,
that could hurt its chances. And I mean, if they were to nominate Kate Winslet, I think they would only nominate her just for her popularity and be like, "Hey, we're gonna invite Kate Winslet to our show," you know,
yeah, well, yes,
for
and
ratings, or instead of actually honoring her for her performance. I mean, because just like what they did with Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie for The Tourist, even though that was critically and commercially a disaster.
yeah,
But I mean, I'm sure with Jennifer Lawrence, I'm sure her popularity will probably play into her possibly getting a nomination. But like I said before, even though Mother does have a technically fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes with like a 69%, but of course it has the infamous audience cinema score grade of an F, and I know some people who absolutely think it's one of the worst films they've ever seen. I liked Mother a lot. I think it had some good elements, although there's this one scene that I'll agree with my with people who hated it. There's this one scene near the end that I think went too far.
mhm.
I'm not going to spoil it, but anyone who's watching this and scene I'm talking about, have you seen Mother?
Not yet, but I definitely hope to within the next few days.
Okay, I'm just prepare yourself for a scene within like the last 20 minutes. It'll be like, which that's like the one scene that I guess you could argue makes Mother a horror film if you want to, because there's been the big debate of is Mother really a horror film or not.
Hmm.
But even like but for the most part, the reception of Jennifer Lawrence's performance has been, I guess, pretty positive. I mean, I don't think she'll get an Oscar nomination for it,
Oh yeah,
if she somehow does, there's no way she's going to win, because voters themselves will react to Mother the same way a lot of critics and audiences will. I'm sure some voters will absolutely love it, and others will think it's just pretentious garbage. Just
well, oh, sorry.
And I'm just making that assumption because I've always read the anonymous that Scott Feinberg from the Hollywood Reporter publishes when he talks to voters about what they're voting for and why, and their reactions are always pretty much over the map with certain movies. Like some movies, voters will be like, "Oh, I loved it, best movie ever," and other voters will be like, "Ah, worst movie ever." It's like watching paint dry.
Well, yes, and in fact, I was about to say that I'm on Rotten Tomatoes now, and Wonder Wheel's now at 32%.
Damn.
Uh,
Wow, that's certainly a low for Woody Allen. I mean, his films usually don't get even his bad films don't usually get ratings that low.
well, yeah, in fact, I believe I've read that's his lowest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes to date.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if his film coming out next year fate, has the same fate or not. And of course, next year you got bunch of people in this film coming out next year, including this year's potential Oscar nominee Timothy Chalamet.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes. And in fact,
and and former and former Disney Channel star Selena Gomez.
oh, yeah. And I was about to say that I guess a reason why we shouldn't write off Kate Winslet entirely, even though I do agree with the points you made. Again, she's a Golden Globe darling. They gave her two in 1 year for Revolutionary Road and The Reader, and she surprisingly won 2 years ago for Steve Jobs, when a lot of us were predicting Alicia Vikander for Ex Machina.
Right, or I think I was predicting Rooney Mara for Carol.
She was
I think
nominated as
that's who
lead
most
at the
people.
Globes.
Oh, right. No. Okay. No, I know who I predicted. I think I predicted Jennifer Jason Leigh for The Hateful Eight.
Mm. Yes, and not to mention they've also nominated Winslet 2 years ago for Labor Day, despite that film's meddling reception.
Right, and that's what I had forgotten to say earlier. I couldn't think of the film, but I knew there had been a film that got bad reviews, but she was still nominated anyway, and that was it. Um, yeah, I mean, I know her performance in Wonder Wheel has been one of the few critical highlights. Like, those who hate it say she at least gives a good performance, and they say the cinematography is good, but
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much it from what I've heard. So yeah, I mean, that fifth slot, I think that's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Yes, I agree. Now, on to Best Actor in a Drama. I think, I think there are probably four solid contenders. Well, one at top, or maybe two, given how. Well, okay. So, yeah, I think the two most sure things for nominations are Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour and Timothy Chalamet for Call Me by Your Name. Like, of course, we've been talking. Of course, it's been discussed all season long how this year Gary Oldman really seems a strong frontrunner for the Oscar. Though I guess Timothy Chalamet is in striking distance, given how well he's done at the Critics Awards. Even though the Academy, well, of course, we haven't gotten there yet, but the Academy does have their bias against 20-something-year-olds. But yeah, I think those two are locks for nominations. While I have Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread and Tom Hanks for The Post getting in, I think they're solid third and fourth spots for nominations. Even even though I did predict, even though a lot of us predicted Hanks would get in last year for Sully, given not only, well, given how well that film did at the box office, and of course the Hollywood Foreign Press usually loves that. Though of course Viggo Mortensen, that's where we first saw the Viggo Mortensen train take off for Captain Fantastic, where he got nominated every precursor, including the Oscars. So yeah, I think Hanks is solid. And while the fifth slot is pretty much up for grabs.
Mm. All right. Well, just based on how the Globes separate these categories, so right now I have Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour in first place, Timothy Chalamet for Call Me by Your Name in second, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread in third, Tom Hanks for The Post in fourth, and then Jake Gyllenhaal for Stronger in fifth.
Yes, I definitely have him in my fifth place. Yeah, I think, well, even though that film kind of came and went early on, where he could get lost in the shuffle, I mean, I think he
Right.
gets. Well, I mean, again, I recently saw Stronger not too long ago, and he really does. I mean, incredible performance he gave. I think really deserves attention from at least one of the major awards groups this season. Though I guess one person we should look out for is Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel Esquire, given that he's earned all. Well, the Globes do like him. I mean, he is a recent recipient of the Cecil B. DeMille Award 2 years ago, and he was nominated last year for Fences. Though that film is pretty much although Roman J. Israel Esquire, that film has pretty much been under the radar. So, I mean, I don't know if he can be able to still get in based on the strength of being Denzel, but yeah, I think Gyllenhaal.
He he would he would be deserving of a nomination, if you were looking at just his performance. I
Oh, true.
was quite underrated. I don't really get some of the criticisms against it, but it's not a perfect film by any means. It's certainly not as good of a follow up as it should be to Nightcrawler, which is Dan Gilroy's previous film. But
Well, which also
it's
features
good for
Jake
what it is.
Gyllenhaal.
And of course, many people I know were furious when he didn't get a Best Actor nomination at the Oscars for Nightcrawler.
Mhm.
He certainly would have been a better nominee than Bradley Cooper for American Sniper.
Well, who I thought was deserving of a nomination.
Well, he was good, but performance in American Sniper to that of Gyllenhaal for Nightcrawler or David Oyelowo for Selma, the latter two, in my opinion, were far more worthy of a nomination.
Well, yeah, that was a pretty competitive year for nominations, but yeah, and guess in fact going down the list, I guess other distant possibilities could be well, especially as we saw with again last year, Viggo Mortensen came out of nowhere to get a nomination for Captain Fantastic, and pretty much was able to continue on with nominations all season long. So I'm wondering, I guess possibilities we could see of that were I know you thought this film was overrated, but I guess maybe Robert Pattinson for Good Time, Andrew Garfield for Breathe, or maybe even James McAvoy for Split.
I don't think McAvoy's going to happen, although he'd be a deserving nominee if he were, because I think Split might be his all time best performance so far, just from what I haven't seen every movie of his, but fall, like if it had come out in the fall of last year, I think McAvoy certainly could have gotten into the Best Actor race. So Split, I think it'll be a victim of its early release date. Although I'm glad there was at least one good movie in January. Split was so good it was number one at the box office for 3 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, ironically, Watch Mojo put it on their top 10 films you missed this winter video. I'm like, really? How did people miss that? Because it made back its budget in its first weekend. It
Mm-hmm.
opened with like 40 million and its budget was only like 10 or 20 million. I forget. But Pattinson in Good Time, if he couldn't at least break into the Globes, then I don't think he has a chance. I mean, his performance was good. I mean, the film wasn't bad. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10, which for a letter grade would be like a B minus. But there's just many other problematic parts of the plot, and there's a lot of unresolved loose threads. But that would involve going into a spoiler discussion, and I've already had plenty of debates with people about the movie, so I
Yeah.
don't want to start that again.
Uh-huh.
But who was the third? Oh, Andrew Garfield. If he couldn't get in, I mean, I don't know if he'll get into the Globes. If he does, I think that's as far as he'll go because
Mm-hmm.
Breathe only last time I checked only had a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, and critics either thought it was disappointing or they just thought it was fine. Like there's no like outstanding rave reviews. This isn't if this didn't get the same kind of rave reviews that The Theory of Everything got a few years ago, and that too,
Yeah.
of course, is about a famous disabled person.
And his wife, yeah. Well, yeah, and last time I checked, it was at 66%. But like I said, Garfield, McAvoy, and Pattinson all seem like distant possibilities for the Globe nominations.
Yeah.
But I guess now moving on to the comedy side.
One more thing I forgot to say about Jake Gyllenhaal. And there's been the debate of is he on the bubble for an Oscar nomination or not, and will this be a makeup IOU for his Nightcrawler snub? I don't know. I mean, yeah, he did get in at the Critics' Choice Awards, but I noticed with the Critics' Choice Awards there were 7. They usually have 6 nominees in the acting categories, but this year they had 7. So that means there was obviously a tie in the vote somewhere.
Well, yes. Not to mention that 2 of those nominees are competing on the comedy side.
Right, and of course, one of them, Daniel Kaluuya. There's the big debate of whether Get Out is a comedy at all.
Like The
But
Martian.
I honestly think if Daniel Kaluuya, I honestly think he might have the better chance of the Oscar nomination and maybe even a SAG nomination, just because Get Out is still managing to make waves at critics groups, and there's a big campaign for it, whereas Stronger hasn't really gotten any critic group attention at all, despite its praise, and I don't see them really mounting a huge campaign to get Oscar attention.
Well, again, I think it'll be a matter of how much attention
Plus,
Gyllenhaal. I'm sorry.
Plus, there's the big debate, and I mean, admittedly, it didn't make huge news waves, but I've certainly seen some Facebook group discussions about it and a few articles of whether or not casting an able-bodied actor like Jake Gyllenhaal was the right thing to do for a movie like this, even though his character technically was able-bodied before losing his legs in the Boston Marathon. And there were quite a lot of people who were insisting they should have actually cast like a double amputee actor, but like maybe digitally insert his head on an able-bodied actor's body, and then when Jeff Bowman gets his legs lost, then have him show his real body with like real amputated legs and all, and that there was all these big debates about what's more ethical, using casting an able-bodied actor for someone to play a disabled character who loses their legs in a tragic accident.
Hmm. Well, yes, and as uh, hmm, and I was about to say, I guess it'll be interesting to see if Gyllenhaal at least gains any tractions for nominations at the Globes and/or SAG, or I guess maybe BAFTA, because that might be a little more helpful to him gaining a nomination. But again, now onto the comedy side. Okay, best motion picture, comedy, or musical. I think there are two strong contenders for nominations, and one of them, I think they both might have a strong shot of winning, and that's Lady Bird, which has, of course, recently broke the record as the best reviewed movie on Rotten Tomatoes, most beating out record previously held by Toy Story 2, and Get Out, which of course was a big hit horror comedy back in February, and and of course it's still. And even though I do have my doubts about it being that big of an awards contender, I think it's easier for it to get in here at the Globes. While I think the two solid contenders joining the nominations are Disaster Artist and I, Tanya, while the fifth slot I currently have given to The Big Sick, which came out back in the summer, yet won tons of acclaim. And again, they're really, the PR camp, their marketing team has really been keeping the film alive by having different cast and crew members on talk shows talking about it.
So my rankings right now, despite the controversy of whether or not it's a comedy or a drama, and I actually have Get Out in first place just due to its acclaim and just the fact that people are still talking about it so much. That's just for the pre-nomination. Depending on what gets nominated, if momentum changes, I might put a different film to actually win. But I have Lady Bird in second place, The Disaster Artist in third, Sick in fourth, and I, Tanya in fifth.
Okay. Yes, and who knows? Maybe Get Out could pull a Martian by overcoming its controversy and actually win Best Comedy.
Right. Although, and if it does, I wonder what Jordan Peele will say as he goes up on stage to accept the award.
Oh yeah, could he say the exact same words Ridley Scott say and say, "This is a comedy"?
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah. Well, I mean, with The Martian, I can kind of understand why it got placed there because Matt Damon certainly had a lot of witty one-liners in the film when he's making his video blogs.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Not to mention that Fox also had The Revenant competing in drama, so they were both. So luckily, Fox was able to win on both best picture races at the Globes that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I guess looking at other, distant possibilities, there's The Greatest Showman, which, of course, the Hollywood Foreign Press usually loves to recognize musicals, even though we haven't seen the reception for Greatest Showman yet. I mean, then again, the Globes also.
Which is why I don't have it predicted here, because I honestly have no idea how it's going to be received by critics. I mean, do I think it'll get the same kind of acclaim as La La Land last year? No, I don't think it's going to get that much acclaim. At least not that high. I mean, maybe somewhere in the somewhere in the 60s to 70s range, it could be there. Yeah, I know PETA is already mounting a massive campaign to try to boycott the film.
Wow.
Because of even though they use CGI animals and stuff like that, they're like, don't forget, P.T. Barnum was actually not a very good man in real life. So
Well,
people shouldn't see the film according to them.
Uh, well, yes, and I was about to say, even though, of course, the Globes have nominated, I guess, film, movie musicals that weren't particularly well received in the past, like Phantom of the Opera, The Producers, Mamma Mia, and I.
Burlesque.
Well, yes, that too.
Burlesque.
Well, yes,
Even
you
though
just
I haven't seen Burlesque, but
same
I've never
here.
heard anyone say a positive thing about it.
Yeah, yes, and
Except for when on Grace Randolph's YouTube channel, but this was back when she was doing audience reviews, not reviewing them herself. She was
yeah.
interviewing the only people who would talk to her, I guess, who were in the theater and like extreme Cher fans because they're like, "Oh, we loved it. Yeah, Cher deserves an Oscar for this."
It just goes to show how, I guess, how knowledgeable the average person can be.
Right, right, and um, yeah, I mean, maybe one possible nominee that could sneak in here and upset one of these is maybe Battle of the Sexes,
Oh, I was about to.
even though that too isn't really much of a comedy per se, but I guess they put it there because the fact that Steve Carell as Bobby Riggs is basically the big buffoon, trying to make himself look like this big hotshot before his match with Billie Jean King.
hmm Well, yes, and yes, I was about to mention Battle of Sexes, even though that film kind of, came in wet early on, where it could be lost in shuffle. I guess another dark horse potential nominee here is probably the live action remake of Beauty and the Beast. Even though, I mean, granted, it does seem like a film the Globes would nominate. I mean, even it was a big success earlier in the year, and of course they awarded the cartoon for best comedy back in 1992.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not really predicting it for anything right now, just because came out so early in the year. But I mean, I guess it's possible. I mean, I certainly
Oh yeah.
wouldn't count out the chance it gets nominated. I'm just not sure it'll probably be in like sixth or seventh place in terms of the votes. I'm assuming.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
but but actually now moving on to film
Yes.
comedy musical actress.
Uh-huh.
Um, my rankings right now because this is one of those categories since comedy doesn't really have too much of a strong definition here at the Golden Globes. It could go any which way really, but
Yeah.
right now I'm predicting Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird in first place, I Tanya in second, Judi Dench for Victoria and Abdul in third, Battle of the Sexes in fourth, and Salma Hayek for Beatriz at Dinner in fifth.
Interesting. I'm on the that prediction center, and Selma Hayek is nowhere to be found. Actually, I mean, I had her.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I was able to. She was in there when I made my predictions.
Well, do you have the page up right now?
I'm looking at my own. I'm looking at my own predictions. I clicked on the thing where you can see all your predictions together rather than have to go category by category.
Oh. Oh yeah, because Selma Hayek has now disappeared from the list of the list of contenders to predict.
Hmm. I
Yes.
guess maybe it's been reclassified as a drama. I don't know because I thought I heard them say they were trying to. It was originally classified as a drama, but then they campaigned for it to be a comedy or something. I don't know.
Well,
I just know there was an article about the producers of the film challenging where the Globes wanted to categorize it, but I guess if Selma Hayek truly is disqualified from this category now, then maybe the fifth nominee might indeed be Emma Watson for Beauty and the Beast. But obviously,
uh,
uh, we'll just have to wait and see about that.
well, oh yes, and as for my rankings, yes, I agree that Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie are the two logs for nominations in this category. It'll probably be down to those two for the win, and though my third place, I actually have Emma Stone in third place for Battle of the Sexes. I mean, who of course just won this category last year for La La Land, and she is kind of in that honeymoon period where, of course, from the win, and of course, as we see, especially as Sally Field pointed out, sometimes when they like you, they really like you.
Hmm.
Yes, and I have Judi Dench in fourth for Victoria and Abdul. I think she's a solid choice, and yeah, and I currently have Emma Watson taking the fifth spot because I think, well, again, I think, well, I guess pretty much the slow, not a whole lot of strong contenders in this category. I mean, well, Bliss Watson did receive acclaim for her acting performance. I mean, people have a different conversation about her singing. I mean, from what I've heard, I thought Stone sounded better in La La Land than Watson, but that's a whole nother conversation. And I guess one person to look out for in this category could be Zoe Kazan for The Big Sick. I mean, guess depending on how that film does with the Globes.
Hmm. Although I'd say she's more of a supporting actress just because there's a huge chunk of time in which she's not on screen because her character's in a coma.
Oh, true, although I'm sure they probably are campaigning her as lead so she wouldn't have to split votes with Holly Hunter.
Hmm. Possibly, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. All right.
Now on
Now
to,
with film, comedy, musical actor.
yes.
So this will definitely be an interesting showcase because quite a lot of time with these comedy categories they do pick actors from like smaller known films, and that's like its only nomination, like with Al Pacino for Danny Collins and Mark Ruffalo for Infinitely Polar Bear 2 years ago.
And last year with Colin Farrell for the Lobster.
Right. But then, of course, The Lobster did go on to get an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. But
Yes.
but here but here I think but this year I think that all from more high profile films. So right now I have James Franco for The Disaster Artist in first place, Kumail Nanjiani for The Big Sick in second place, from Get Out in third place, Hugh Jackman from The Greatest Showman in fourth, and Steve Carell for Battle of the Sexes in fifth.
Okay, I have those same five getting in. I think Franco. I think Franco's a solid front runner to win this category already. I mean, and though I have Daniel Kaluuya in second place with Kumail Nanjiani in third, and I guess, and yes, I agree that I have Hugh Jackman in fourth and Steve Carell in fifth, and I guess, I guess the other, I guess from looking down this list, I guess other, well, I guess one, I guess, Sam Elliott's could be a dark horse for the hero, given that, back when that film came out early on in the year, people thought, he seemed like he could be a possible nominee, even though that film came out early in the year where it could be lost in the shuffle. Though I guess if he gets in anywhere this award season, the Globes might be his better shot. But yeah, I guess other two could be Matt Damon for Downsizing, even though that film has gotten disappointing reviews considering it's from Alexander Payne, and Adam Sandler for the Meyerowitz stories, even though I guess given Dustin Hoffman's in the film, it should be interesting to see if they'll even want to nominate it at all.
Yeah, or plus Adam Sandler's just overall film reputation could probably hurt him too,
Well, even though,
especially in recent years with Jack and Jill and That's My Boy, and now his Netflix films, particularly The Ridiculous Six, and its portrayal of Native Americans. I mean, yeah, that might have been 2 years ago, but still, The Ridiculous Six. That movie got such bad reviews. It still has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes.
mhm,
At least
yes,
last time I checked.
uh-huh.
But maybe at a distant possibility, if they do really love Beauty and the Beast, then maybe Dan Stevens could get in as well. But
Well,
I don't really.
I'm sorry.
I said I said if they really love Beauty and the Beast, maybe Dan Stevens could sneak in here. But I don't really see anything breaking. I don't really see anything breaking the ranks of these five. But I only have Daniel Kaluuya in third place because I just think his performance is definitely not the comedic aspect of Get Out. That would be Lil Rel Howery, whereas James Franco and Kumail Nanjiani, their characters are meant to provide comedy.
True. Though then again, Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling both won in these two lead categories last year, but of course it was for a musical. They weren't, well, I mean, I mean, not necessarily comedy performances, just musical performances. So I guess there's that.
Right, but I think that helped out. But I think that was helped out by the fact that La La Land was an actual musical, and
Well,
therefore the
yes,
category is called musical slash comedy. But of course, they created this category back in the day when like movie musicals were coming out all the time.
true. Yes, and as for whether how much Beauty and Beast could be embraced by the Globes, I mean, well, again, the cartoon won the Globe for comedy musical back in the day, but the live action remake, while it was a huge success at the box office, I'm not sure if it doesn't really have the acclaim the cartoon has. So, but I guess
Well,
now,
not on the same level, but it did receive at least generally positive reviews. So
well, well, yes, but I guess now moving on to supporting actress in motion picture, where they combine all genres, comedy, musical, and drama.
yes. Uh, all right. So my rankings right now, I have a strong feeling this could very much be the exact same lineup at the Oscars when those nominations come out. Right now, I have Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird in first place, Allison Janney for I, Tonya in second, Mary J. Blige for Mudbound in third, Octavia Spencer for The Shape of Water in fourth, and I know this might be a bold choice here, but I'm gonna go with it just based on her Critics Circle win from the New York Film Critics, Tiffany Haddish for Girls Trip in fifth.
Oh yeah. I think Tiffany Haddish could definitely be a dark horse for a nomination. I mean, again, we shall see how she fares with the rest of the group. I don't have her getting in at the Globes currently, though. I agree she's definitely possible. And I have the same first four as you. And of course, and though at this point I have Holly Hunter taking the fifth slot.
Mm. I mean, I might predict Holly Hunter for the Oscars if she gets in both here and SAG. Right now, I'm kind of going with Tiffany Haddish just based on her New York Film Critics Circle win, which shows that people are paying attention to her performance. I mean, but we'll see what happens. But I mean,
Uh,
if either of them get nominated, I don't think they'll win.
well, yes, I agree. It's probably, I think Laurie Metcalf definitely seems a solid front runner for the Oscar at this point, and and although I will, and I guess other possibilities in this category could be Hong Chow for Downsizing, Melissa Leo for Negotiate, and yeah,
Yeah, I was originally going to predict Melissa Leo for Novitiate, but then I switched her out for Tiffany Haddish. With Hong Chow and Downsizing, she certainly had some buzz when the film started playing at various film festivals, but there's been some controversy over whether her character is a racist caricature or not. She doesn't think so because she said in an interview that she actively pursued the role, like she would like beg Alexander Payne to give it to her and let her audition for it.
what what
Get all your dirty clothes. Let's throw them in the washer.
I will admit,
But
will do.
but I mean, so that and the fact that Downsizing's gotten only decent reviews compared to other Alexander Payne films, that could certainly hurt her, but the fact that she got a Critics' Choice nomination could help her. So, I mean, but this will be one of those interesting things where Choice Awards will often pick one actor or actress that often won't get nominated at any other award shows. Like in their Best Supporting Actor race for the Critics' Choice, they nominated Patrick Stewart for Logan, and I honestly don't know if he'll be nominated anywhere else.
Yeah, that was definitely a
If
bizarre
but
nomination.
if Hong Chow doesn't at least get a SAG nomination, then she probably has no chance at the Oscars.
Well, yes, and I was about to say, yeah, Stewart was definitely an odd nomination to me at Critics' Choice, but I guess now moving on to supporting actor. Okay, I think I'd say the three strongest, contenders to get in here are Willem Dafoe for The Florida Project, Sam Rockwell for Three Billboards, and Michael Stuhlbarg for Calling Me by Your Name, and I have Armie Hammer taking the fourth spot for Call Me by Your Name as well. Well, it's kind of up for grabs.
Well, right now I have my rankings are Willem Dafoe for The Florida Project in first place, Sam Rockwell for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri in second. I actually have Armie Hammer for Call Me by Your Name in third,
Oh,
for The Shape of Water in fourth, and Michael Stuhlbarg for Call Me by Your Name in fifth. Even though I obviously haven't seen Call Me by Your Name yet because I don't live in New York or Los Angeles. I live in Rochester, New York, and
mhm.
I honestly don't know when we're getting Call Me by Your Name at my art house theater. They haven't posted the date for that yet. So, but from the trailer, I just have a feeling that Armie Hammer might end up getting more of the awards attention because it's the whole point of the movie is the love story between him and Timothy Chalamet.
Well, yeah, I haven't seen Call Me by Your Name yet either, though I have Stuhlbarg ranked higher up. I guess mainly because of the fact that his visibility factor with this award season, because not only is he in Call Me by Your Name, but he's also in The Shape of Water, and he's also in The Post.
Right, but I also think the Oscars do kind of they like a comeback story of sorts because we've had actors and actresses who kind of had spells of their careers where they were just doing like one bad movie after another, or they were plagued by personal problems, and then when they're in a whole series of projects that gets acclaimed, the Oscars will choose to reward one of them. Two
Well,
prominent examples I can think of in recent years are nominated for The Wrestler after he was just in bad film after bad film year after year, and many thought, could he ever be a serious actor again? And even though he didn't win for The Wrestler like many thought he would, he at least gained some more high profile work after that,
mhm.
like with Iron Man 2 and things like that. And then of course there's Robert Downey Jr., who just wrote him off because he was getting arrested all the time for drugs and everything, and he had a chance of redemption at first when he got cast on Ally McBeal, but then he blew that up by getting arrested for drugs again, and then he had to like slowly work his way back with more smaller films, well, not small but more artistic style films like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac before in 2008 he accomplished a full comeback with both Iron Man and Tropic Thunder and getting nominated for Tropic Thunder. And that leads me to Armie Hammer because Armie Hammer has definitely had a lot of highs and lows because he got a lot of acclaim for his portrayal of the real life Winklevoss twins in The Social Network and didn't really get Oscar buzz for that. He certainly got a lot of rightful acclaim for that, but then he followed that up with films like The Lone Ranger.
And
And
J.
then, of
Edgar
course,
and Mirror Mirror.
well, yeah, he was actually, but he was good in J. Edgar though,
Well, yeah, he even got SAG nomination for that.
right? But you know, he had The Lone Ranger, which was a massive bomb, and that I think really hurt his career. And then he had The Birth of a Nation, which, of course, was plagued by the controversy of its star director, Nate Parker, who he too was accused of rape. And that pretty much has destroyed his career for now. But Armie Hammer, he certainly gave a good performance in The Birth of a Nation. I think that kind of helped critics like him again as an actor. And
Mhm.
therefore, with Call Me by Your Name, I think he's proven, at least from a critical standpoint, when he can give a good performance, or when
Mhm.
he's paired with a good director, he can give a good performance. So I think the voters may want to embrace him as like a comeback kid.
Uh-huh.
I mean, possibly Michael Stuhlbarg could be nominated, but then again, maybe he looks like he has also a very prominent role in The Shape of Water. So perhaps voters, perhaps he might cause a split of with himself, kind of like when Ryan Gosling had three films in 2011 with Crazy Stupid Love, Drive, and The Ides of March, and I'm sure vote splitting probably hurt him that year because many people were wanting him to be nominated for at least something, but they were torn over which one he deserved it for more.
Uh-huh. Yes. And well, although we've seen exceptions like Kate Winslet getting nominated for a lead actress for The Reader as opposed to Revolutionary Road, and she was campaigning for supporting for The Reader. And of course Andrew Garfield last year who got in for Hacksaw Ridge when he also had Silence.
Right. Right, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, who knows, but do you think because like even though I don't have him nominated here, I do plan on when we get to my SAG nominations, I do have Jason Mitchell in Mudbound for SAG because I think this year Netflix has proven they're a viable contender because you know when Beasts of No Nation missed out on any nominations, particularly for Idris Elba in 2015, that left a lot of people wondering, does Netflix have a future with the Oscars? But do, because back then Beasts of No Nation was like the only major film acquired by Netflix because Netflix didn't produce Beasts of No Nation, they only distributed it. And a lot of the movies that submitted that they're campaigning for Oscar consideration are the films that weren't necessarily produced by them but picked up for distribution, like Mudbound. They only picked it up at the Sundance Film Festival. And they also picked up Okja and the Meyerowitz stories, New and Selected, and all those have like Oscar caliber talent.
Oh yes, and I guess not.
Mudbound, I could see maybe Jason Mitchell sneaking in here for Mudbound over Michael Stuhlbarg, but I'm just guessing Michael Stuhlbarg for now because Call Me by Your Name, since it's set in Italy, I could see that appealing to because since these voters are all foreigners, I could see its foreign location appealing greatly to them. So, whereas with Mudbound, that might have a greater chance at the SAG Awards and the Oscars because race relations and there's a very big aspect of racism in the story. I could see how American voters will find that more relevant because of the fact that with Donald Trump as president now, many people seem to be more open of expressing racism, as we saw with the Ku Klux Klan rallies last summer.
Yes.
And I think Oscar voters will want to give a big middle finger to people like the Ku Klux Klan by nominating Mudbound and actually in Mudbound, since I've read the book, the Ku Klux Klan is in that story, and what they do is it leaves you with like you feel like if you ate a bunch of food, you might feel nauseous enough to throw up because it gets that bad.
Yes. So
because I've noticed Golden Globe voters aren't always the most enamored with American-centric stories, although they did like films. They gave that a lot of nominations, but
only one win.
But right, but and I think Armie Hammer has the better chance overall over Michael Stuhlbarg because he's more of the comeback kid. And I just think at other award shows we might not want to count out Jason Mitchell for Mudbound just because of him, just because of the nature of the story. And, if voters do want to do an IOU, they could do it there because I know many people thought Jason Mitchell was snubbed for Straight Outta Compton a few years ago.
Well, oh yes. I guess now moving on to Best Director. Yes.
Yeah, all right.
I'm sorry?
I'm just saying this will definitely be an interesting category because there's definitely some solid locks here, but then there's a few people who may or may not get in, but there's at least 3, I think, that are safe. So my rankings as of right now are Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk in first place, Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water in second, Steven Spielberg for The Post in third, Jordan Peele for Get Out in fourth, and Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird in fifth.
Oh, well, my current rankings, I have Christopher Nolan in first place right now for Dunkirk, and I have Guillermo del Toro in second. Third place, I actually have Luca Guadagnino getting in for Call Me by Your Name because, again, he's an Italian filmmaker, and of course the Hollywood Foreign Press likes to recognize, international talent like that. And yes, I have Spielberg getting in, and I just put Jordan Peele in fifth place. I don't know if it'll get him all the way to the Oscars, well, at least with a nomination there, but I think it'll be easier for him to get in at the Globes.
Yeah. The real key here will be who gets the DGA nominations, even though those don't always line up. But I mean, like if Greta Gerwig or Jordan Peele were to get DGA nominations, Directors Guild of America, for those who don't know what we mean by that, then they might have a good chance at the Oscars. Although because the DGA also now has a category of Best First Feature for a first-time director, I think both Jordan Peele and Greta Gerwig will be locks for that category.
Well, yes, not to mention that Garth Davis got 2 nominations by the Directors Guild last year for Lion, where he was nominated for and won First Time Director, and was also nominated in the feature directing category as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll see because, but anyway, my rankings, I have them here just because of the overall acclaim with Jordan Peele and Greta Gerwig. I put them there over Luca Guadagnino just because of the buzz of their films. I mean, if I had to make a 6th place prediction, I guess Luca Guadagnino would be it. But I mean, who knows? Because with the Globe directing categories, since these are journalists picking these nominees and not actual directors, you never know you never know how they judge the category based on how actual directors would judge it.
Well, yeah, like they nominated Tom Ford last year for Nocturnal Animals.
Right, and that was, even though I like Nocturnal Animals, I wouldn't say it was worthy of any Best Director nominations. Yeah, so I'm guessing they judged the film just based on its overall acclaim, whereas the directors in the directors branch of the Academy probably make their judgment based on the directing techniques that they recognize as they watch the films.
Yes,
because these journalists obviously don't judge directing the same way that actual directors do.
Right. Yes, and I'm sorry.
Which is why there's often a lot of big differences with the DGA nominees and the Oscar nominees compared to this.
Well, yeah, like of course Mel Gibson last year took Garth Davis' slot for the Oscar lineup.
Right.
Yeah. So now on to Best Screenplay.
Okay, and of course this is a unique category because the Golden Globes have no distinction between original and adapted. They just put them all together.
Yes. So okay.
As of right now, I only have 1 adapted screenplay in here and 4 in the original, but I have them ranked here just because they seem to be getting the most buzz for their writing. I have right now Call Me by Your Name in first place, Get Out in second, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri in third, Lady Bird in fourth, and The Shape of Water in fifth. But if I think Mudbound maybe could possibly sneak in here and possibly unseat one of these nominees if they choose to do so, because it has like a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's been getting various screenplay nominations at critics groups.
Yeah, I guess that's one for me to look out for because I currently have The Post getting the 5th slot. But yeah, Shape of Water is definitely possible. And yeah, I definitely have. Well, yeah, Lady Bird, Call Me by Your Name, Get Out, and 3 Billboards. I agree are my predictions getting into this category.
And James Ivory, I don't know what the overall record for the oldest Golden Globe winner is, but maybe he could very well be it because he wrote Call Me by Your Name, and he currently is 89 years old.
Could the record holder be Ennio Morricone? Because I know he currently has the Oscar record.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't know what the Golden Globe records are, but yes, I know that Ennio Morricone is the oldest Oscar winner of all time. Ennio Morricone is one of those rare people to have won a competitive Oscar after being awarded an honorary Oscar for lifetime achievement.
Yeah.
He was given an honorary Oscar for lifetime achievement in 2007. So, yeah, I mean, but I could possibly see The Post getting in, but I just have The Shape of Water in the 5th spot just because it's expected to get so many other nominations that I don't see how it'll fail to make the writing. I don't see how it'll fail to get a writing nomination as well.
That's a good point. So I get now last category here, and that's Best Animated Feature.
All right, I have Coco in first place, Loving Vincent in second, the Lego Batman movie in third, The Breadwinner in fourth, and Despicable Me 3 in fifth.
Well, yeah, those are the same 5 films I have getting in. Yeah, I think Coco is a solid frontrunner here, given its Pixar and its international flair. It's set in Mexico, and yes, and I think. Yeah, I think the late, and even though Despicable Me 3 did not receive the best reviews, I mean, the Hollywood Foreign Press has recognized less than stellar received animated films before, like Cars 2.
And Hotel Transylvania.
Yeah, yes, that.
Although many people I know they think Hotel Transylvania is one of those films that gets an unfair critical rep simply because of Adam Sandler being in it.
Uh-huh.
To me, even though I haven't seen it, frankly, the movie just looks too juvenile and childish for my taste.
Mm.
Like it's only like as if it's only made for 5-year-olds. But
Mhm.
yet a lot of adults seem to love that movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, and yes. So, I guess that's it for the Golden Globe predictions on the film side. We'll be back soon with our Golden Globe predictions on the TV side.
All right, see you then.